400-pound bear away from his garbage. And then one day wakes up, looks at his schedule and goes, Lexington again? And he comes out to see everyone here, and it reminds me why we do what we do. We're always thrilled to have him, thrilled when he has a new book come out, especially when it's in the Dresden series, which when I first started here 10 years ago, I hadn't read. And Brian DeLam, who's a bookseller who probably many of you have been accosted by for far too long, accosted me, and he's put Stormfront on my desk. And he made me buy it, first off. He didn't give me his copy, but he made me buy it because he knew that, me being me, I would read it if I paid for it instead of just put it off. And I loved it. I couldn't wait to read more. And each time a book comes out, I celebrate it, we celebrate it, and we're thrilled that you're here to celebrate the newest release from our good friend. Please join me welcoming Mr. Jim Butcher.
Hey, would you let me know at like 45 minutes or so?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because otherwise I'll just talk all night. Hi! Back to the green hills of Kentucky. I always like driving here just because it's nice. I'm living in Colorado now in the mountains, which is kind of neat because I live at about 8,500 feet, so I have to do all my exercising and stuff up there. And so when I was in Dallas, and I only had about 10 minutes to get from one of the concourses to the other ones in Dallas, and it takes forever. So I was doing a lot of running as a part of that. And I pull up to the plane, and then I stop, and I'm like, I'm not breathing hard. The mountains have made me a god. It's the only rational explanation, obviously. So I'll be starting a church later, but it seems so complicated. I don't want to rush into it, So anyway, I don't usually like talking and doing speeches. I usually like talking with people because I'm not good at the speech thing. So let's just do some question and answers. Is that okay with you guys? Okay, good. We'll just do that. All right over here. Brave man.
When's your next book on the area?
When's the next book on? The next Cinder Spires book will be out. With any luck, it'll be out 6 to 8 months after the next Dresden book, which I have to have finished before I get married. Because Kitty can enforce a deadline on me. The Penguin kind of missed they lost their bluff. They tried to play a bluff once on me, and I called them, and then they just kind of bowed their head and shuffled away, So since then, I've had a little bit more leeway. But anyway. About 6 to 8 months after that, and I'm gonna have the next Dresden book finished by the end of August. Because I actually have a house and an office. Man, it ain't even a big house. It's like a 1,300 square foot floor plan house, and it took them, instead of 9 months, 3 years to build it. Never pay somebody to build you a house in an area where there's lots of people building houses, because even the incompetent buffoons can get a job in that market. So work the wise. Right here.
Lots of stuff happened on that Halloween when that Harry was born. Margaret died, Wendy was godmother, Lord Ray got cursed even though he's used mortal magic. But he doesn't use mortal magic, so was maybe that part of the bargain in addition to being a godmother?
And I don't remember Lord Wraith ever being immune to mortal magic. Did I write that? I didn't think so. No, I think you're thinking of the Loop Guru, but or the Lugaroo, I should say it properly. Now that I mispronounce all my words because I taught them to myself when I was reading in school. I got to remember to pronounce them right when somebody corrects me. It's like, it's not Loop Guru, it's Lugaroo. Oh, sorry.
There is at one point Harry casts I think does some spell at Lord Wraith that is drawn into some kind of field around him.
Yeah, that's right. Because he had the three porn star witches backing him up, like the ones from Macbeth. Yeah, that was my Macbeth reference there. With Macbeth, porn stars, sophistication. And they were covering him for that point, and Dresden hadn't known about it then. Okay, there. Now we've tracked it. And what was the rest of the question? Because
I was going to ask if that was part of Margaret's bargain
That whole thing with Lord Wraith and so on? Nah, not so much. Margaret really, she created a lot of drama. You know, she was kind of that kind of person, so yeah, there wasn't nearly as much thinking ahead. She was very much an extemporaneous sort of person. So yeah, that wouldn't have been her bag to plan that out.
Yeah, it doesn't fall apart.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you just repeat the questions?
Oh yeah, well, okay, sorry, I'll repeat the questions from here on out. Hi.
Hi. So I have a question because I've noticed that, like, obviously Harry and Michael have a lot of adventures together, and then Harry and Molly have a lot of adventures together, but there aren't really any, like, Harry and Michael and Molly, like, as a trio together, and I was wondering if that's something that you have done on purpose, or if that's something that just kind of happens.
So the question is, there's a lot of Harry and Michael going and doing things, and a lot of Harry and Molly going and doing things, but there's never been any Molly and Michael and Harry going and doing things. Is that by design or what? The general answer to it is that whenever I'm putting a Dresden book together, one of the things part of the canon for putting together a Dresden book is I got to pick a sidekick, and somebody's going to be the sidekick for this adventure, and depending on which book it is, you'll be able to tell who's the sidekick. Excuse me. Which means that Dresden does most of his stuff with just like one other person along for a lot of it, because trying to write an entourage on the road is just impossible. I just hate it. I'd much rather have a couple of people that I know I can handle and do really well, for the most part. So that's mainly why. And plus also, going and doing that with your dad and the guy you've got an unrequited crush on, yeah, well, it's drama, but yeah, that's not something that. That's one of those situations that Molly would be completely avoidant about. It would never even get to her forebrain. Oh, we should go do this with the three of us. It'd just be with Lori, Dad and Harry together? No, like that. And that's about as much thought as would go into it, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so at certain times you've had other perspective of characters, and you've had those characters meet Harry. Like, of course, in Full Moon, we had Will meet Harry, and then in the short story where Murphy met Harry. Do you ever do one where Michael and Harry team up for the first time?
Oh, will I ever do the short story of Michael and Harry's first team up? Is the question, because we've done a lot of team ups as we've gone along. Nah. Michael got the in media res introduction, and they had met like 2 or 3 weeks before or something like that, So it was just they'd been running around chasing ghosts. So, yeah, here in the back. Yeah.
All right. Three real short yes or no questions.
Okay.
So in Vault 7 Skin Game, every non-architectural artifact that we saw was pretty much directly related to Christianity and the history thereof in some way. So the 3 questions. One, was Vault 7 dedicated to Christianity explicitly, or did that just happen?
No, that's the super weapons vault. So yeah, that's where all the weapons go. Not like the awesome weapons, just the ones that the mortals might pick up and use to wreck things. So.
Question 2. Are there vaults after Vault 7? So 8, 9, whatever.
Probably, yeah. I only got the tour, so I don't work there or anything yet.
And are we going to see other super weapons from other vaults?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. It's not like it's very easy to go to go rob it. It's not like just everybody could go do that. You got to have a lot of resources to pull it off, and somebody like the White Council could probably do something. Except I would just love to see the White Council discussing with each other. Okay, so who's going to be the one who dies? I'm pretty sure that would get filibustered for a real long time, among that crowd. So. Yes, I think the White Council not doing anything that's favorable. I kind of feel that way about the federal government. Just sort of, I don't care who's in charge of it. Mostly I just say, could you just leave me alone, please? You know, and I think that's really mostly what you want, you know, so. But yeah.
Throughout the series, we've seen Harry's power level go up. How's his power level in Peace Talks compared to the senior council?
The question is that we've been watching Harry level up as he's gone through, and you can be like, yep, it was a fireball, he's 5th level, ice storm, 6th level or 7th level, you know, like that. But the question is Harry's power level as we kind of go into as we've gone into Skin Game, how does he compare to the senior council? And the answer is that he compares to the senior council the same way he always has. I mean, he's this huge, muscular, you know, thug as far as wizards go. You know, that's what his power is. He's a powerhouse. But people who are better at magic can still whip him. Just like the big guy doesn't always win in the fight. It just depends. The big guy has a great advantage, and all other things being equal, the big guy usually wins. But it's not enough all by itself. Harry's big all by himself, but he's still learning his skills. The senior members of the White Council would tear him apart. I mean, it would be like, you know, it'd be like a good fight, but he'd wind up on the ground. So here in the back. You're gonna have to do it louder than that, man. Is there any pantheon of gods that I'm really excited about, or that I refuse to include? Now, there's none that I refuse to include, but you know, I mean, it's a lot easier to put pantheons in there that don't really have like a billion people following them anymore. I mean, you're just less likely to tick somebody off that way. I don't mind writing about Christianity because I grew up on the fun end of fundamental Christianity, as opposed to the mental end, and I'm familiar with both. You know, so oh my gosh, lost my train of thought. Oh, pantheons, right? So I'll do the Christianity stuff a little. Because I'm familiar with it. I mean, I've memorized books of the Bible. I'm okay on my theology for Christianity. It's less so for other religions and systems of belief that I have not participated in and don't really have the inside information on. Because reading books doesn't give it to you. You've actually got to talk to people and see them, and it takes time, and that's hard. But I mean, I do want to do some of the other pantheons because I mean, you'll notice there's more and more of the old gods popping up as we're going along, which means nothing. Don't think anything of it. Don't worry about it. But and it's also, I mean, there's been like casualties among the pantheons since they were originally established. You know, Thor is on the outs with Asgard in the Dresden Files universe. He sort of wanders the earth alone because he's sick of, he had this huge disagreement with Odin back when Odin decided he was going to be, mostly mortal and playing by the mortal rules so he could stay involved. Thor is just like, his general modus operandi is he goes around to campuses and then walks on and tries out for the football team and then gets on the football team. And then goes there for 4 years being awesome and having to restrain himself from being too awesome to get noticed by the NFL because he doesn't want to do that. But yeah, I mean, there's this short story in my head I keep meaning to write about Dresden going down to the University of Oklahoma where this storm self went crazy and riding around with the guys from the NSSL trying to catch her. And his driver is Thor, who's interning for the NSSL while he's playing for OU. And Harry never realizes it, but that's the story in my head. I keep wanting to go back to it. I kept thinking, I'll put it in a comic book or something someday, but it just hasn't worked out that way. Right here.
Are we ever going to see anything specifically with Bonnie and Maggie doing anything together?
Are we going to see anything specifically with Bonnie and Maggie doing things together? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're making pancakes in chapter 1, so, poor Bonnie, she just doesn't, she's like got all this information and absolutely no point of reference with how it fits into the real world. So, she knows all these things, like she can go in the kitchen with Maggie, and Maggie can hold her up to the pantry, and she can go, and Bonnie can say, oh, we can make 376 different pancake recipes with what's in here. And Maggie be like, great, well, what do we need? I'm not sure. Like that. I don't know how much of it is. How much? A teaspoon? I don't know. Because there's no real world experience there for Bonnie. So, but she's a fun character to write. But a Bob the Skull is not made in a day. It takes centuries. So basically you've got this dippy little ditz who just doesn't know anything, but has lots of knowledge. Woohoo! Hi, right here. Do you think there'll ever be any contact between Bonnie and the archive? Maybe. The archive is poor Ivy. She's had a terrible life. She got the archive dumped on her a few minutes after she was born, and never got the chance to learn to be a human, or to learn to be a kid, or to interact with other people. She's kind of had a miserable life. On the other hand, she would have a lot in common with Bonnie, I suppose. So, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'll get there. We'll have to see. A lot of the little stuff, I don't know if it's going to happen until it happens. So I just have to be working on it. But over here in the glasses. Yeah.
Have you ever considered doing a side story with Ebenezer?
Side story with Ebenezer? No, not really. I have considered doing a spin-off series with Ebenezer, which should be. Well, I thought about it. I don't know if I ever will. It would be the French and Indian War from the point of view of the supernatural world. So we'd have you'd have Ebenezer when he was a young hothead, and the Merlin when he was a young hothead that hated Ebenezer. And then you'd also have this young Knight of the Cross running around with them named Washington, and that would be cool.
That would be real cool.
Yeah, it would be cool because hey, the Sword of Hope is a cavalry saber. How do you get through Valley Forge? Maybe if you have a Sword of Hope, it helps. Like that. Hi, right here. Yeah.
You mixed around Murphy and Harry's relationship. I'm wondering if they will have any happy times.
Will Murphy and Harry have any happy times? I feel I must ask you if there's been anything in the series thus far, to suggest that that's likely. I don't know. I believe in happy endings, but I don't know if this story is going to have one. Honestly, we kind of get to the big end part, and I'm not sure what's going to happen until I go write it. And it's annoying because I've been wondering for about 20 years, so I hope I don't screw it up. Here in the back.
After having so many books and so many side stories out now, what's your writing process like, Dresden versus the other books? Do you kind of think the story first and then, let's be honest, we're probably not the most forgiving fan about inconsistencies. First and then give to somebody and for the canon stuff, or do you go back and check stuff? Do you have some master archive?
Oh, I don't check stuff. I don't check stuff because it would be useless for me to check stuff. See, when you're writing a book, you'll go through and you'll plan it out, and then get the rough draft written, and then you'll clean that up and send that to beta readers. You'll change it based on feedback from them. Go through it again one more time to see if there's anything that needs to be done, and then it goes off to the editor. The editor comes back with some comments, and then you change it some more, and then it goes off to the copy editor or the line editor, and then that comes back, and you've got to fix all the grammar and spelling errors and word repetitions and stuff like that. And then once you're done with that, it goes to the proof stage, and then you got to read the proof and make sure that is all done. So by the time a book gets done, I've seen between 9 and 11 slightly different versions of the same story. And in my head, I can't keep track of which one wound up in the books because I'm not aware of. Because you guys have read the books and you've read one story and one version. For me, I have to stop and go back and say, which scene did I wind up writing that? Because is that the one where I had him? No, it's not that. What did I do? Now I have to go look. But in any case, I've kind of got this cloud of parallel universes rather than a working knowledge of what actually happened in the specific story, the book universe. So that's why I have friends. And so Priscilla Spencer is very good at that. Lowell, my friend Lowell in Chicago is really good at that. And when I say really good, what I mean is it is so annoying. but really, really necessary. You know, because I'll like write this big scene and be like, boom, 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 pow, that was good, and send it off to the beta readers, and it comes back and I'll hear like, yeah, you killed that character 3 books ago. I mean, stuff like that happens to me. But, you know. Yeah, Lou.
Speaking of parallel universes, Harry's kind of taken aback every time somebody knows his mother. Are you planning on doing anything like with a Goodman Gray meets Margaret Le Fay type thing?
Am I planning on doing anything with Goodman Gray meets, like for example, Goodman Gray meets Margaret Le Fay? Because Harry gets weirded out when people, you know, talk about his mom like they knew her when he never did. And the answer to that question is no. I had no intention of doing that until now. That's something to keep in mind for the future. Thank you, sir. Over here in the black shirt. My favorite parallel universe that didn't make it into a book would probably be from not Changes, but Deadbeat. No, wait, no, Changes. My favorite parallel universe is Harry the Necromancer, because he definitely would have gone for necromancy before he went for the coin. I think at the end of the day, because you know corpses are gross, but you know demon seductresses are frightening. So you know that's different. But that would be cool. And then all of Harry's friends would be dead. Right here in the red shirt. How do I determine the power scaling between all the pantheons I use in the series? I use the 5-dot scale from World of Darkness way back in the day. So basically, I mean, if a normal human could do it or could do it using tools and equipment, you know, that's 1 dot. You know, if it's somebody who's clearly supernatural and could really whip up on regular mortals on a steady basis, that's 2 dots. Heavyweight white council folks, you know, they're 3 dots. You know, and like that. And so it's just different weight classes is what I do. So right here, yeah.
So to go back to the previous question, what is your actual writing process? Like, how do you go from idea to getting it published?
What is my actual writing process? How do I go from idea to getting it published? Well, you have the idea, and then you work for 10 years on completely different ideas that don't pan out, but that do teach you a lot of things. Then eventually get it sold. But the actual process itself, I always start with what is in the industry is called a story question, and it's a question that always acts the same. Okay, when your protagonist or when some event happens that changes the status quo, your protagonist sets out to do something about it. But will he succeed when antagonist gets in the way? And you can break every story there is down to that. You know, when Frodo discovers that the ring he inherited is actually a super weapon of enormous power, he sets out to destroy it. But will he succeed when Sauron and all the forces of evil in Middle Earth get in the way? Yes, Lord of the Rings. But you start with that, and then from that question, you know, you have your protagonist, you have your antagonist, and you start developing them. Then you start, okay, who's going to be on the protagonist side? Who's going to be on the antagonist side? And start building that out. Then I start trying to figure out what's the most, you know, what's like the best way to get people together. There's usually a couple of good scenes in my head when I get going that aren't attached to anything, but that I want to use. And then after that, it's just a matter of going through and you know outlining your chapters and then getting them written and stuff like that. So, but honestly, if you go pick up Debbie Chester's book, I basically just do what she writes about. My writing teacher, Deborah Chester, she published a book called The Fantasy Fiction Formula, or the Formula in Fantasy Fiction, or something like that. It's 3 F's, I know that, but it's just writing technique advice and guidelines and stuff that she taught in her class that I took in OU. So I mean, if you want to, yeah, there you go. Here's a copy right here. Yeah, The Fantasy Fiction Formula. But yeah, when she told me she was going to write that and publish it, and then she asked me if she could pay me to write a foreword, and I'm like, no, you can't pay me to write a foreword, you know. So I wrote the foreword for her, and, you know, but really good material in there, really good stuff to sink your teeth into if you're interested in writing. Right here.
So is Molly the only one of Charity's children with magic?
Is Molly the only one of Charity's children with magic? Yeah. There's probably you know at least a 25% chance that one of the other kids could have that sort of talent too if they worked on it. but they haven't. The reason that Molly's talent was more obvious and functional was that her mom, when Molly was born, had still been doing magic fairly recently, and she hadn't let her abilities atrophy. But after that, she did, because she just wanted to get out of that whole scene. So it was always her fear it was always Charity's fear that her sins would be visited on Molly, and they kind of have. So yeah, right here.
Not exactly a process question, but yeah, a really interesting acceleration through the story for the pacing accelerate. What's the discipline or technique you use to do that?
He's asking me how I pace my stories and how I use them, and how I decide to make that pace happen the way I do. That's kind of a natural consequence of the kind of the outline model that I use to put together the books. The way that I do a story arc, because I didn't really understand what story arcs were when Debbie started teaching me about them. So I would just, when I was planning a story arc, I would get a big piece of paper and draw an arc. And then here would be the beginning of the story, and here would be the ending of the story, and then up here is the big flashy middle point that costs a lot of special effects budget, part of the story. And the idea is that to get from the beginning to the end, you've got to take each step along the way to get you to the middle part. And the idea is, if you get to the big middle, and whatever event it is that sets off the big middle, sort of topples the dominoes you've been setting up until then. The first half of your book is you setting up dominoes. The second half of the book is you knocking down the first domino in the big middle, and then just watching the natural cascade that happens in the story because you set it up that way. And that's why it works out like that. It's just because the way I plan a story is okay, it's gonna be slower here at the beginning. We're gonna get everything put into place, and as soon as everything's into place, we're gonna do this roller coaster thing until the very end and make people stay up till 3 a.m. And that's always my plan. And whenever I'm writing, I'm always thinking, how can I make sure that the reader is going to stay up till 3 a.m. reading this? Where can I? Did I let up too easy? At the end of a chapter, and Harry just went to sleep. That's boring. They'll go to sleep too. We'll have an assassin jump him. And that's sort of that's kind of my process. Is you gotta use every trick you know to keep people interested until you get to that big middle point at the top. After that, if you can get them there, they'll stay for the end. Let's go back here. Sure.
So we know that Gilles de Rais is one of Winter Nights.
Speak up, please.
Oh, sorry about that. So we know that Gilles de Rais is a Winter Night. How does Joan of Arc fit in that entire scenario?
Joan of Arc was probably a Knight of the Cross, and probably not terribly stable either. If only that. Her instability was sort of fell in the direction of zealotry anyway. That would be. I think she was probably a Knight of the Cross for a while. Yeah.
I'm originally from Chicago, and by the way, thank you for sending that book detective story in Chicago. I just love it.
Oh, you're welcome.
I was just wondering, how much of your own experiences with the city inspired the backdrop?
How much of my own experiences with the city of Chicago inspired the backdrop? I didn't have any experience in Chicago until book 9. It took me that long to start breaking minimum wage, and I didn't have money to go to Chicago, so I had friends in Chicago, or at least people I knew in Chicago, and I had a mailing list of Chicago contacts. I'd be like, hey, I need to know what the east wall of Graceland Cemetery looks like. I drive by it on my way to work. I'll get pictures today, stuff like that. Now I've got Google Earth, and that helps a lot. Because I'll be using that. I'll be like, okay, well, this scene is they're having a fight down Michigan Avenue, and I want to have the Janasqua kick a car in front of Butters. And okay, let's see what kind of cars get parked on Michigan Avenue. No parking, no parking, no parking. No, damn it. But they do have these big concrete planters. We'll use one of those, like that. So. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. I made a bunch of mistakes with Chicago that eventually I've been working through, but I didn't want to set it in Chicago anyway. I originally wrote the series set in Kansas City, and my writing teacher wouldn't let me keep it there. She looks at me, she says, Jim, you are already close enough to Laurel Hamilton's toes as it is. You don't need to set your story in Missouri. And I was like, fine, we'll do it in Chicago. Yeah, right here.
Are you a cat person or a dog person?
Oh, I'm mainly a dog person. Yeah. I just know cat people.
And you, are those, is Mr. or Mouse, are they inspired after any real life cats and dogs in your experience?
Is Mr. Mouse, are Mr. Mouse is inspired by real life animals? Yes, both of them are. Mr. was actually the name of a cat of a guy who used to mush with us when I was mushing on Amber Mush and all these other role-playing mushes, and where I learned a lot of my writing technique. Was much of my million words of crap was done LARPing, or not LARPing, but mushing. You're welcome. Because man, I was awful when I got started, genuinely awful. But anyway, this guy that I mushed with had a cat named Mr. And every once in a while, Mr. would occasionally get tired of him mushing and demand attention. And when he did that, there would just be like this long string of gibberish that would come from his character across the screen. And immediately, everyone there would break character and go, "Hail, Mr. Hail, Mr. Hail, Mr." like that. It happened in the middle of a meeting of the Senate of chaos. So, Mr. ruled chaos for a while. And then Mouse, I didn't start writing Mouse until after I got a puppy for my son when he was 9. And I had forgotten how awesome it was to have a dog in the house. And so I designed a dog for Harry. I had to. I didn't have a choice. Granted, Harry's dog, wasn't a Bichon Frise. But man, that Bichon Frise saved my kid from a bear. And also, he was just an awesome dog. And Mouse is the dog that my dog thought he was. He never knew he was a Bichon Frise. I didn't have the heart to tell him. He went through his entire life assuming he was a Rottweiler. So, but yeah, that's where it comes from. Yeah, right here.
When Harry dies and is being revived for that 6 months, the world changes so drastically, and the dynamics between the other people change so drastically.
Yeah.
Are you going to address more of the outside world? Because you kind of talked about it, and then it shrunk back to just individual people, but there's so much going on outside.
Yeah, it's big.
So are we going to hear more about that eventually?
In bits and pieces. I don't want to go writing, news reports from the Dresden Files world, because they don't know what's going on anyway, So, I'm sorry, I didn't repeat the question for everyone. What was the question? I'm sorry, guys. I got 3 hours sleep last night. I've been on planes all day.
Are you going to address more?
Am I going to address more of what happened to the wider world with the events of changes where all this power shift happened? I'll probably, there'll be bits and pieces of it coming along, and you'll hear about more plot developments that happen, because of all the chaos that happened when Dresden. But I don't want to spend time. The stories aren't about that. Stories are about Harry and the people around him. So I'll just mention the stuff that's going on out there, and then move along. Let's see, right here.
Okay, I know there's been some stuff come up with shape-changing, shape-shifting, stuff like that. And there's also communities of people that, aren't comfortable in their own bodies. Would the magic in the Dresden world would it be possible to use that magic to change one's body without breaking the laws of magic?
The question is, in the Dresden Files world, there's a lot of shape-shifting and stuff like that. So the question is, if it would what was it again? Would it be possible to use the magic to do things like change gender and stuff like that without breaking the laws of magic? Yeah, probably. Shape-shifting is really hard. It takes a long time to learn, unless you've got somebody who's a really, really good teacher. I think Billy and the Alphas did it about 1.5 years. But yeah, there's no reason you couldn't. You would probably have to set something up so that you would either have to set something up so that there was a continuous stream of power going into whatever it was to hold your form in place, or maybe you'd have to maybe build a magic focus or something like that to make it happen. But yeah, it can be done. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, fun question for you.
Sure.
Have you ever thought of doing an animated series for Dresden?
Ha-
If so, what style would you prefer?
Have you ever thought of doing an animated series for Dresden, and if so, what style would I prefer? No, because I'm terrible at drawing. I can't even do stick people. Round shapes and straight lines. No, that's beyond me. But as far as doing it, yeah, I mean, I've considered. I really think the Dresden Files would be better as an animated series than it would as a live action one anyway. Plus, I mean, if we did it as an animated series, then I could go to Marsters and say, "You've got to do this for me, bro." He really likes reading Harry, guys. Let me tell you, James is one of the most highly paid people in Hollywood. He makes more money than almost anyone else on television, and we can't afford his rates. He's doing the Dresden Files because he likes it. Yeah, and yeah. When I was recording, I was talking to the voice director when I was recording the voice of Marcone for the audiobook, and he was like, "Oh, hey, Jim, James wanted me to tell you hi." I said, "Oh, that's great. Yeah," and he said he wants to know when Peace Talks is going to be out. And I'm just like, I actually did that into the studio microphone. Everybody laughed for like 2 minutes. Yeah.
So, another fun question. A lot of guys are being envious of Brandon Sanderson's cloning technology. Have you ever found out the secret to that?
Yeah, the question is, I've mentioned several times online in various places that I am jealous of Brandon Sanderson and his clones. The man has clones. No one writes that fast and teaches without clones. And no, I haven't figured out how he did it. Let's go here at the back. Oh, are we going to see Fairfax again? Dude, if you don't trust my integrity as a professional writer to use the gun on the wall, at least trust my laziness to not have to do work twice. Fairfax is going to be. I mean, but I planted him early. One of the main inspirations for story structure for the Dresden Files was the television show Babylon 5. Babylon 5 was a television show that did things that television shows did not do then, and certainly do not do now. You know, I mean, they would start plot in season 1 that you didn't get the end of until season 5, and that was that. You know, if you weren't there for the ride, you're just going to be missing things, and that's all there is to it. And I love that. I love that so much. Things that I remembered from 5 years ago that felt like hanging plot threads that were suddenly getting tied up, and I was like, oh, this is so satisfying to me. And so when I started the Dresden Files, I was like, I need to do the same thing. You know, I need to think the same way. And so that was, you know, that. And so yeah, a lot of stuff got planted early that didn't come out till way later. Maybe you noticed. Here at the back in the blue.
Settle that for us. Individually, in terms of raw power, which of the Fairy Queens is more powerful in terms of raw power? Depends on what time of the year it is. Midsummer, Titania will clean Mab's clock. Mab will handle her at midwinter. You know, I mean, that's just how it is. And then at the what is it? Walpurgis and the other one, Beltane. Is that right? I'm trying. I would have to go look at my. I've got a wheel somewhere that's got all the Wicca holidays on it, so I can go check it. Oh yeah, right. It's like a little pop-up 4-color thing. It's ridiculous.
Fun comment in case this ever helps you out. James Marshall said his favorite character to read is Bob.
James Marshall said his favorite character to read is Bob. What?
It's Bob, for sure.
It's Bob.
My question is, did you have any fun writing the story in the Monster Hunter International anthology?
Yeah. Did I have a good time writing in somebody else's world? I wrote a Monster Hunter story for Larry Correa's anthology, and I had a blast with that. I mean, I got to write this completely different character. You know, I'm writing a character who, in many ways, reminds me of my father and grandfather because he's extremely intelligent, very well read, not a lot of schooling, not a lot of formal education, but he knows how to handle himself and he knows how to fix things. And that was kind of a good, that was kind of a pretty good basic description of my dad and my grandfather. And then I ruined it by going to school. But now that this is the first time I've had like my own home, like since being an adult, and I'm learning, and I'm becoming quite fanatic about it. You will not mess up my kitchen. See this perfectly clean kitchen? This is its natural state. I've been very weirdly territorial about it, and it's being reflected, and then I'm learning how to fix everything so that I don't have to keep calling people because it takes them a week to come to the mountain. So yeah, I'm making up for lost time now. Yeah, right back here, man. Yeah.
Are we ever going to get any more with the Jade Court?
Are we gonna get more Jade Court stuff? Maybe a little. Jade Court is really, I mean, they're serious isolationists. They very rarely leave the Yangtze River Valley, and as far as their participation in the Dresden Files world, it's minimal. On the other hand, you know, they also, I mean, even they know things that are going on in the outside world, so it's entirely possible that their agents may show up at some point, or may have shown up already. But anyway, you know, that's what they're doing. They're never going to be, at least not in this story, they're never going to be, you know, like the Red Court of Vampires, you know, like the White Court of Vampires. That's not how they operate. China is very different from the rest of the world, and that includes their supernatural things as well. So, right here.
What is your favorite series that you've written? I know Dresden's your bread and butter, but Codex Illyria, Silver Spire.
What is my favorite series that I've written? Among the ones that are actually published, you mean? Dresden's the smoothest to work with. Like it's easier to get through problems with Dresden because he's a character who is similar to me in many ways. So I can just think, well, what would I do? And what would Power Gamer Jim do in this situation? Oh, Jim would do this. Well, we'll just have Harry do that. But anyway, what's the rest of it?
Just which one was your favorite?
Which one of my favorite? Harry's easiest. Fury's was really my first love. Is Swords and Horses fantasy. So I mean that's what I really wanted to be when I set out to be a writer. The Dresden Files was an accident. I mean, it was a project that I was doing to prove to my writing teacher how wrong she was about all these things she was trying to teach me. Yeah, really, I was not a terribly bright young man. So things have stayed even. Right here. Yeah. Oh.
Question about Never Never. It's been really connected to you for the last periods. Could you use Never Never to build some more actual outsourcing systems for another sector? Or no one connected?
Ooh, that's a good question. The question is, can you use the Never Never to do things like, could you travel through the Never Never to a different part of the galaxy and step off on another planet and talk to somebody and talk to people on another planet? I don't think it would be practical because you would still be covering distance in the Never Never. I mean, it'd be more practical than trying to float there. But it would still be. I mean, something like that would have to be a hell of an epic journey and go through complete weirdness. And I'm not sure you'd come out the other side sane, but I think it's doable. You would just have to have somebody like maybe if Margaret had had more time, she could have tried something. But at the moment. The farthest that anybody's gotten in the Dresden Files world, as I've got it established, the farthest anybody's gotten is the moon. So nobody's tried farther than that yet. Back here. Yeah.
The monks that had mounts with Kentucky that Dresden quite are they ever going to show up at some point to collect on that or rectify?
Yeah. Are the monks where the Foo Dog puppies came from? Brother Wang and company. Or was it Wang or Wong? It was Wang. Yeah, I think I was writing that at about the same time I had started the Spider-Man novel, and the Spider-Man novel had Doctor Strange in it, so it had Wong. So I Wong and Wang. What was the question? Oh yeah, are the monks going to come back to collect? They don't have so many knee breakers at the monastery, as far as debt collection goes. But I mean that assumes that they want the dog back and that the dog didn't wind up where it was supposed to be in the first place. They did go hire Dresden to rescue them. Yeah.
Who's your favorite sidekick and which of the villains?
Who's my favorite sidekick and who's my favorite villain? I like Michael as a sidekick because I like writing this. Michael's like the only person in the Dresden Files universe that really has a lot of moral authority that Dresden respects. There's Michael and there's Ebenezer, and Dresden will scrap with Ebenezer, but he won't scrap with Michael. He's too good. You can't scrap with Michael. You're the bad guy if you scrap with Michael. So he's probably my favorite to write as a sidekick as far as sidekicks go. As far as villains go, I like most of my villains. Nicodemus is really creepy for me to write. Getting into his headspace is weird because he's just sort of generic predator, you know? And he just doesn't care about things, and people are like these little annoyances that flutter away before his eyes anyway, you know? So, you know, really killing him really doesn't make any difference on a practical level, as far as he's concerned. Mab is a fun villain to write. I enjoy the hell out of writing Mab. She's just a good time. I'm trying to think which of the other villains. I mean, Marcone is. I don't know if Marcone is a villain or an anti-hero. You know, I mean, it's sort of hard to call depending on what kind of story I'm writing and how he's connected to it. Although I did enjoy writing Marcone's viewpoint. And I enjoyed reading for it too. That was cool. The voice director, I read it and I just kind of read through the story and did it, and got to the end and the studio tech was like, "Yeah, is that it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's the last page." And he goes, "Okay," and I didn't think it was a big deal. But then the voice director who was operating from New York, I think, came over the intercom and he was like, "Hey Jim, you know, if you ever want a job voice acting or narrating, I think we can work together." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Oh wait, was that unusual?" He's like, "Yeah, most people don't do it without stopping." I'm sorry. I just knew the words that were coming next because they came from my brain. Right here. Yeah.
Are you interested in doing anything else with the Oblivion War, either writing another story with it or maybe Harry blown up by accident?
Okay, am I?
And if you were to finish it the way that they're wanting to finish it, what would happen to the archive?
Okay. Am I going to do more with the Oblivion War is the first part of the question, and then if or is Harry just going to blow it up and make it all go crazy? Excuse me. What effect is that going to have on the archive if that happens? Well, I'll tell you right now, people who are involved with the Oblivion War, the people you don't want in the war to forget things so they go away is wizards, because these guys. They hoard information like gold, is what they do. And you're trying to make information go away to win this war. If you bring the wizards in, you're never going to win. Nobody wants the wizards involved. It's like, do you think we should, you know, the White Council might be no. Yeah, and that's kind of the response from the folks fighting the Oblivion War. But it's not something that Dresden can get involved with. In a story from Dresden's first-person point of view, you know, the things that people keep from Dresden, I have to keep from you. And then when the Oblivion War is one of them. It'll probably show up in the spin-off series, because the Oblivion War is this weird thing that it'll get hot for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and then nothing happens for 30 years, and then something else happens, and you got to jump on it. And so you can't really tell that story with a fairly limited young person like Harry who has limited experience. You have to have somebody who's had like centuries of experience, and then you can do the Highlander thing and skip through time. Following the storyline, and that then may be something that I do in the spin-off series, which I'm tinkering with for after I'm done with Dresden Files. But the spin-off series will star Goodman Gray. It's called Monster LLC because when you're in trouble, you need a hero to help you out. But when you're in real trouble, sometimes you need a monster, and that's what Goodman Gray is. He's a monster for hire. So it'll probably be a darker story in a lot of ways, because Gray doesn't have a lot of Dresden's hang-ups. So, yeah. Well, the biggest one I did. That I fought to keep in the series, despite feedback from beta readers and so on. Oh, that happens all the time! Because they'll give me completely reasonable feedback about something which they have only incomplete information because I haven't given it out yet. So when that happens and the beta readers are complaining about something that they're complaining about because I set it up that way, I set it up that way so they would complain about it because dance puppets dance. I mean, that's what I do for a living. I'm a writer. I manipulate your emotions for a living. Because I hated that when I heard it, when my teacher said the business of writing is the business of manipulating people's emotions. And I was furious when my teacher told me that, but she's right. If you read a story and you find yourself laughing when the author wants you to laugh, and crying when he wants you to cry, and cheering when he wants you to cheer, you'll go buy out his whole section. Because he knows what he's doing, because you trust him to tell a good story. And that's what I do, is manipulate emotions. But we only did half that question. What was the rest of it? The biggest one that I fought to keep. I think there was a point in Changes. Yeah, it was a point in Changes where I had left I had intentionally left in the story a little bit of an inconsistency in terms of description, so that when you read back through it after you'd already read through it, you would realize, this is where Molly wiped his memory. But and at the time, people saw that when they're like, this is bad, this is terrible, and it's in such this really important scene, you can't leave it there. And I'm like, oh yes, I can. And then after they got to that part in Ghost Story, and then they went back and read it, they're like, oh, you're so evil. I'm like, you're welcome. You're in the black shirt. It gets better after that, I promise. Let me think. Probably the most direct inspiration, would be Laurel's work, Laurel Hamilton's work, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Cast a Deadly Spell. I don't know if you ever saw Cast a Deadly Spell. It was an old movie on HBO. I think it came out about 1989 or 1990, starring Fred Ward, Remo Williams himself. Although I liked him better in Tremors, which is still one of my favorite B monster movies. But it was a hard-boiled private eye novel with the lead characters is H. Philip Lovecraft, private detective, and after World War II, everybody came home with magic, and now everybody uses magic, and there's always a price for it, but people kind of ignore that. And H. Philip Lovecraft is the last honest man in town. He's the only one in town who doesn't use magic. And so after I'd watched that, I was like, what would be way more fun is if nobody else had magic and he did. And then that way he can make trouble for himself as much as he wants, and that makes my life easier. So, right here.
What's your opinion on the Dresden File RPG and the board game?
What's my opinion on the Dresden File RPG and the board game? The board game is fun. I can play it. But for me, the fun thing about the board game is doing things like taking characters that never showed up in a book and playing that character through a different book that they weren't in. And so I can have, in the board game, I can imagine Michael going up against the FBI werewolves all by himself, and that's fine. And it's a lot of fun. The role-playing game is really, really, really neat, and I'm the one person on planet Earth who can't play it. Because I am a power gaming weasel at the RPG table, people. Imagine trying to GM me in your Dresden Files game. No, it is that way, and if necessary, I'll write it that way in the next book, Mr. Game Master. And yet, if I'm the GM, too much like work. Let's go back here.
Maybe two more.
Okay. Right back here in the black? Yeah. Have I ever watched Twin Peaks? Not once. No, it came through. Twin Peaks started on television right about the same time I got my driver's license. So yeah, watch. Stay home and watch TV. Drive out to the park and make out with my girlfriend. Like that. So yeah, I never watched it. Sure, and right next to him, yeah.
I'm wondering if there's much more openness in Harry, like for romance in the future.
Oh.
It's so complicated that that's way back burner.
Oh, well, is there more romance for Harry in the future, or are things just so complicated that he's just going to close down? And the answer is if he closed down, his life would probably be easier, but that wouldn't be very interesting to write about. Besides which, you know, Harry's the guy who, he's, as far as emotionally speaking, he's a tank. I mean, he'll just keep going and going and going for the people around him. It's not in his nature to shut off like that unless something like really, really bad has happened and he's really furious at himself about it. So you saw him shut down like that at the beginning of Summer Night after Susan got turned into a vampire and left him. But yeah, I mean, but he's the guy Harry's the guy who's always going to stand up one more time and say, nope, I'm not going to abandon you. So we'll see how that works out for him. Because you know, that doesn't always work out so good. It all depends. And I think that's about the time we've got for. Okay, one more right here.
Make it good. We're all
Pressure's on, man.
Speaking of the hanging plotters that you mentioned, are we ever going to find out who did the hit and run on Harry and proven guilty who put the bomb in Murphy's car?
Are we ever going to find out who put the bomb in Murphy's car and who did the hit and run on Harry and proven guilty? Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. There's like all these things that have happened that are sort of unexplained, right? I wish I knew what was going on. Okay, I'm gonna call it there, but we're gonna get some books signed and so on. Hey guys, thank you very much. You're always so kind to me.